Welcome back. It's incredible in a week when the hurricane devastates the Panhandle, leaving a trail of death and destruction that politics would even be part of the conversation. But it was in a big way when, of all days, Republican gubernatorial candidate Ron DeSantis launched a negative ad against Andrew Gillum as Hurricane Michael was bearing down on the Panhandle and Tallahassee, where Gillum is the mayor. Now, to be fair, Senator Bill Nelson had negative ads running targeting his rival, Governor Rick Scott, as well. But as Peter Schorsch, the Republican publisher of FloridaPolitics.com, noted, DeSantis' ads didn't need to come down to areas that were not affected by the storm, but by staying on the attack during the storm with an appearance on Fox made him look insensitive, if not crass. Schorsch saying just once it would be reassuring to see Ron DeSantis, the well-educated former naval officer, husband, and father, allow his better angels to guide him on the campaign trail. And joining us for more, our State Representative Byron Donalds of Naples, representing the DeSantis campaign, and former Tampa Congressman Jim Davis, representing the Gillum campaign. But first, with our poll question tonight, here is our digital producer, Chloe Conboy. Chloe.
Alan, tonight we asked our audience on Facebook if it was a mistake for gubernatorial candidate Ron DeSantis to launch a new attack ad on Mayor Andrew Gillum on the same day a major hurricane is bearing down on the city where Gillum is managing an emergency response. This poll will stay open the duration of the show, and we want to encourage everyone to go to our Facebook page and vote in the poll. You can find our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/mysuncoast. Coming up next, I will be sharing some of the comments posted on our Facebook poll, and you don't want to miss it. Alan, back to you.
So, gentlemen, Chloe, thank you very much. What's your take on this, Representative? Obviously, you are, supporting the DeSantis campaign, but there's been a lot of criticism of him in terms of launching this ad of all days, the day that Michael is hitting Florida.
Well, listen, Alan, first of all, I know our thoughts and prayers go to all of the survivors in the Panhandle of Florida, and to making sure that our first responders are safe out there, trying to restore power and make sure that people get their lives back on their feet. Now, I know how everybody feels about something like this. I felt the same way when I first heard about it. But when I talked with the campaign, they were very clear that they put the order out to not have those ads run, to have those ads pulled. It just didn't make it down into some of the local television stations, and that's why they were aired. It was never the intention of the campaign to have those ads be played, of course, during this tragedy facing the Panhandle, including the city of Tallahassee. We put the order out to stop those ads from being aired, but it didn't follow through.
Jim, is that fair enough? You've run campaigns like this before. When you're putting out ads, it's not instantaneous in terms of putting them up or taking them down.
Well, when a hurricane comes, you can make quick decisions, including television stations. And I read a quote where Ron DeSantis basically said, this is politics and it is what it is. So I'm not convinced that they pulled it down as quickly as they should. And the most important thing is why you do it. We've all lived through hurricanes here on the West Coast. And the last thing you want to be focused on is politics. And you want clear, timely information. And running those ads is not what's in the best interest of citizens. When you're running for the governor of the state of Florida, you need to be a leader and set a high standard, and I think Ron DeSantis failed.
Byron, what about the comments from FloridaPolitics.com? Congressman DeSantis has made a couple of faux pas, as they say, during the course of this campaign. As we enter the final stretch here, I would imagine, he can't afford too many of these kinds of things.
Well, listen, a couple of things. First things first, the order was given out. What everybody needs to remember is this hurricane, Hurricane Michael, came upon all of us very, very rapidly. It looked like it was going to be maybe a Category 1, and then overnight it turned into a Category 4. The order did go out to stop those ads. That is exactly what happened. It didn't reach it in time. We wished that it had. That being said, there are still less than 30 days left in this campaign, and the thing that's most important to the people of Florida are whose policies are actually going to take Florida into the next level. And it's clear when you compare policy to policy, not personalities, but policy to policy, that person's Ron DeSantis.
Congressman, briefly, obviously, Bill Nelson had ads also about Rick Scott as the governor is trying to manage this crisis.
There shouldn't be any ads run during a hurricane by anybody. They should be pulled down as quickly as possible. Bill Nelson knows what it's like in a hurricane. He was our insurance commissioner during Hurricane Andrew. It's where he really showed some steel in helping protect consumers and homeowners. And I know he's up in the Panhandle right now with Governor Scott. So everybody, including Andrew Gillum and Ron DeSantis, needs to stay focused on the matter at hand, and there'll be plenty of time for politics.
Okay. Our conversation on the week in Washington and politics continues. Welcome back. We are talking about the week in politics, and joining us for more, our state representative Byron Donalds of Naples, representing the DeSantis campaign, and former Tampa Congressman Jim Davis, representing the Gillum campaign. Same question, different politician. Again, just as we understand how devastating Hurricane Michael was on the Panhandle, the president was in the Oval Office with, of all people, Kanye West in what has been described as a pretty bizarre scene. Let's take a quick look.
He might not have expected to have a crazy like Kanye West run up and support, but best believe we are going to make America great. I think that with blacks and African Americans, we really get caught up in the idea of racism over the idea of industry.
Representative, again, as we are learning about just how devastating the Panhandle is from this storm, did we really need Kanye West in the Oval Office?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, that was a prearranged visit. When you have a tragedy like what's going on in the Panhandle, to be frank, sometimes you don't want the president on the ground immediately. That needs to be reserved for first responders to get in there and try to prepare the damage. But hold on,
at least communicating how seriously the situation is. I mean, what does it say having that kind of event on that kind of day?
But Kanye West wasn't in the Oval by himself. Sitting next to him was Jim Brown. Jim Brown is an icon in the black community, and he was there as well. The purpose of that conversation was criminal justice reform, something that the president is willing to actually open the door and listen to. He couldn't, once you're in the room in the Oval, what Kanye West did is what Kanye West did. But I think one of the things that also needs to be talked about in this is how a lot of people in the media have trashed Kanye West. Kanye West has decided that he wants to take the opportunity and use his platform to try to talk about things he feels are important to the black community. I commend him for that. What I would call on other leaders in the black community to do is, instead of vilifying him, they should use that opportunity to use Kanye West as a bridge to begin to discuss some of these things that affect the black community with the current president of the United States.
But it's a little bit ironic that back in 2012, Donald Trump slammed Obama for campaigning with Jay-Z right after Hurricane Sandy. Congressman?
It was a frivolous conversation. It was incoherent. And I like Kanye West music, at least most of it. But this is the president of the Oval Office at a time where we've got an unprecedented disaster in the Panhandle. The president needs to be managing. He doesn't need to be on the ground yet, but I'll give you an example. We may need to get the military in there. I heard today it could be 2 months before the power is restored in Gulf and Franklin County. The president needs to lead as the commander-in-chief. He can't just sit back and watch television. So it was reckless for the president to be using his precious time doing something like that when he needs to be focused on our needs here in Florida.
Representative, just your take on what Kanye was, that scene in the White House, with what Kanye was saying and what he was attempting to communicate.
Well, like I said, the topic of the conversation was criminal justice reform. Kanye West had a stream of consciousness, and frankly, sometimes recording artists, that's what they do. But that was the core of the message. I think the bigger thing, the more important thing, is that he was taking an opportunity to speak to the current president of the United States about issues in the black community. Was he as coherent as you may be or as Jim may be? No, he was not. But that doesn't take away from the fact that he was taking his time as a citizen. The president gave him an audience to be able to discuss those issues that are important to the black community. I think what we should be doing, instead of trying to vilify him or criticize him or saying it was the wrong time, is use that as an opportunity to do things that are impactful for all Americans, especially those of color.
All right, we have to take another quick break. We're just getting warmed up on our conversation on the week in Washington. We'll continue right after this. Welcome back, everyone. We are talking about the week in politics, and joining us for more, our state representative Byron Donalds of Naples, representing the DeSantis campaign, and former Tampa Congressman Jim Davis, representing the Gillum campaign. But first, so what are you thinking about our poll question of the day? Our digital producer, Chloe Comboy, has been keeping track of your comments. Chloe, what are people saying?
Alan, we are having tons of comments on our Facebook poll right now. Here's some of the comments that I want to share with you. The first comment is from a viewer named Andrew. Andrew says, DeSantis is nothing but one of Trump's tools. On November 7th, the GOP is going to wonder why they didn't nominate Adam Putnam, who is well qualified, well funded, would have easily defeated Gillum by taking votes from both Democrats and Republicans. On the other hand, Pat says, I'm sure that the decision to place an ad and the day they start airing are not the same day. Come on, people, it takes time, paperwork, and planning to get ads moving. And with a totally different perspective, Laura says if you're an intelligent person, you will research each candidate and come to your own informed decision, regardless of all the mudslinging political advertising. And just so you know that there's still time to go to the ABC7 Facebook page and comment your thoughts and vote in the Facebook poll. Alan, back to you.
All right, thanks, Chloe. Let's turn the page a little bit in terms of national news here, and really the disturbing news about the Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who was a contributor to the Washington Post, apparently assassinated at the Saudi embassy in Turkey, and I want to get to, Senator Graham was talking about this before, the U.S. response to this. The president, Jim, did talk about that he takes this seriously. He wants to know what happened, but one way or the other, if there's any planned arms sales to Saudi Arabia, he does not want that to go away because he says that the Chinese or the Russians can take our place. Let's take a look at what the president said.
We're going to find out what happened with respect to the terrible situation in Turkey having to do with Saudi Arabia and the reporter. And nobody knows quite yet. Nobody's been able to put it all together. People are starting to form ideas, and as they're formed, we'll let you know. But it certainly is a terrible thing.
Have you spoken to the King of Saudi Arabia about this matter?
I have not
plan
called
to soon,
him.
sir?
I will be calling him. I will be calling at some point King Solomon.
Jim, this is a complicated issue because, this man contributed to the Washington Post, but we have a very complicated relationship with Saudi Arabia.
I spent time in Saudi Arabia after 9/11 and worked on those issues when I served in Congress. And what I don't understand is why the president has already taken the option off the table of sending a message to Saudi Arabia that this is morally unacceptable. We are a leader in the world, and we set standards by our behavior. And I think you're going to see the Congress, both Democrats and Republicans, disagree vehemently with the president on this, because there need to be consequences if, in fact, this crown prince in Saudi Arabia assassinated someone who was a resident of the U.S.
Byron, we've already seen Republicans and Democrats in the Congress demand an investigation here, but we know what one of the bottom lines here is we depend on Saudi Arabia for oil and keeping gas prices low. There's a sensitive calculation here.
Well, I think the one key thing is that this is an absolute tragedy, and there has to be an investigation. I think that's definitely going to come. But the president also has to be very diplomatic here. I think often there's a caricature of the president of the United States that he's just willing to be a gunslinger and just say whatever he wants. And at this point, he's actually doing the right thing, which is actually having a measured tone and a response with respect to Saudi Arabia. Their position in the Middle East is one of critical importance, not just to us, but to the rest of the world, frankly. It's a complete tragedy what has occurred at the embassy in Turkey. But this has to be handled very, very carefully.
But where do you draw the line? Because the new crown prince allegedly kidnapped the prime minister of Lebanon, I believe, for a short while. And the country, as Senator Graham said to us earlier today, we still do not have a good understanding of Saudi Arabia's role in 9/11.
And let's be clear here. This is not about energy. We have developed enough independence from Saudi Arabia that they can't pressure us on that. This is about a proposed arms sale of defense industry contractors with Saudi Arabia. And the president is saying that he doesn't want to turn down that money coming into the United States, even if we condone an assassination of someone who is a resident and a journalist in the United States. That's not who we are. That does not reflect our values. We should tell Saudi Arabia, no, we don't want your blood money in this situation, and we need to get to the bottom of the facts. The former ambassador to Saudi Arabia under President Bush has already said that we should put this arms deal on hold.
Let's talk about the impact that this and the hurricane and Kanye West and everything else has had in terms of the midterm elections that are coming up here. The president had a very good week. The week before with Justice Kavanaugh now making it to the Supreme Court here. But then again, Byron, this week you have all these other issues in terms of how he handled the hurricane, Kanye, and everything else. And once again, you see that new forecasts show the Democrats winning 229 seats in the House, which would flip the House. Mm-hmm. Your reaction?
A couple of things. First of all, I think one of the things you have to definitely look at is the president has had a good couple of weeks. with respect to turnout models, one thing that's really not clear is what the effect is of the Kavanaugh hearings on Republican voters. I'll tell you, having been on the ground talking with voters across the state, a lot of Republican voters who are pretty calm about the upcoming elections are definitely going to make sure they get to the polls. That's number one. Number two, the president's handling of the hurricane is yet to be seen because cleanup is happening as we speak. And so that's something that's going to develop over the next couple of weeks. But one thing is crystal clear. If you look at the U.S. economy today, if you look at unemployment in many minority communities at all-time lows, the president is actually campaigned and done the things that he said he was going to do. If you look at funding for restoring the Everglades, he's the first president that's actually gone ahead and funded those programs. Those are things that he's been successful at doing, and I think the voters will respond to him in November.
Jim, we keep on seeing these national polls showing a blue wave, possibly. It looks like the Republicans are stealing themselves for losing the House here. But when you look at the races here on the Suncoast, the congressional race, not only on the Suncoast, but in the entire area, the Democratic challengers are still behind. We saw 2 polls in the last week showing that David Shapiro trails anywhere from 7 to 9 points there. Are you surprised by that?
That's a contested race, and I just want to add, I think people are worn out by all the chaos and drama out of Washington coming from the White House. Apart from this hurricane, I think people are looking for sober, steady leaders, including in our governor. And I think the governor's race, Andrew Gillum's been ahead in every single poll, I believe. And that race will have a lot to do with how this congressional race turns out and a lot of the local races. And I think people are still hurting out there. You take the health care issue, for example. We are one of the few states that's turned down our federal tax dollars coming back to provide health care. 800,000 people in Florida could have Medicaid expansion if Andrew Gillum is the governor. Ron DeSantis' health care plan, he has no plan. So I think people are looking for solutions right now. They're looking for steady leadership. And I think that's the question people are going to ask when they go to vote for governor. And it's going to be a factor in all these races.
Byron, there are a lot of state house and state senate races that are more competitive this year than in years past. 538, which is a national organization that looks at congressional races, senate races, governor races, is saying right now that the biggest surprise of this midterm election may be the Florida legislature, at least the House, flipping. Can you believe that?
No, the Florida House is not going to be flicking. I don't know what 538 was saying, but that's simply not going to be the case. The second thing is the Florida Senate is going to be in Republican hands as well. That's clear from our own internal polling. I think the one thing that is very important, and Jim mentioned this with Medicaid. The reason why we didn't take those federal dollars is because they're not consistent for our state long term. What if the federal government in the future says we're not going to provide the same level of reimbursements, which is their prerogative, not the state of Florida's? You can't walk into a financial arrangement not knowing what the future years look like. And that's why those dollars were turned down. It was sound leadership by Governor Scott at the time, who's still providing sound leadership, and Ron DeSantis will continue that sound leadership going forward.
You're shaking your head.
Oh, well, Governor Scott changed his mind, I think, at least 3 times on this. First, he said he was against the expansion, then he said he was for it, then he said he was against it, and maybe one more time. So he's been rudderless on this issue, but it's about this particular governor's race, and there are many conservative states that have taken these dollars and used them responsibly. And if you followed the representative's argument, we shouldn't be spending money on highways either because the federal government could pull that money, which they're not going to do. This is a partnership. We have horrific problems with people in this area working 1 and 2 jobs. They can't afford health insurance for them and their families. Andrew Gillum will work to bring Democrats and Republicans together to put Medicaid expansion the Florida way.
I want to throw one more thing at you. It's a new Politico Harvard poll that shows that both parties are motivated by different issues. That in terms of Democrats, health care is extremely important and will determine their votes, the survey found, and attempts to fix the Affordable Care Act. Yet with Republicans, most Republicans are influenced by terrorism, jobs, and gun policy, and a sign of the deepening divide. Byron?
Yeah, the different voters have different things of what's important to them. I think the key that's always number one, no matter what party you're talking about, is jobs and the economy. And I've seen that polling firsthand. And if you want to talk about jobs and the economy, the last thing we could possibly do in our state is actually raise our corporate income tax up by upwards of 40%. That will be devastating to not just major corporations. I don't want to talk about them. It will be devastating to to small businesses in our state that have fewer than 20 employees. Because if their costs go up because of tax increases out of Tallahassee, what does that do to the people who are working in those companies? How are they going to get raises and increases? How are they going to put food on their table? It's easy to just say that raising taxes is okay and it's not going to be that big of a deal, but it's a major issue when you're a small business owner trying to make sure that you keep your company afloat and you keep your employees working.
Of course, Jim, what Byron's talking about is Gillum's proposal to raise corporate taxes by $1 billion on corporations to fund teacher pay raises here. Right. But voters many times paint candidates with a broad brush there. Does it help the Democrats if Mayor Gillum is talking about massive tax increases, even though he's not talking about raising taxes on the individual taxpayers?
I think it helps to put out something very fundamental and clear. There's no plan from Ron DeSantis on education that I'm aware of. Andrew Gillum has said that we need to invest in our most precious asset, which is our future citizens, our children, our students, and we are woefully behind in every category in this country in terms of educating our children. And it comes with a price, and the price is that we need to pay more in taxes. And it's the largest corporations that have benefited from significant tax increases in Washington that will pay the lion's share of this, and it's an investment. So I think it's a wise choice, but it gives the voters an opportunity to choose what our future should look like.
We have to take another quick break, and we'll be back for final thoughts in a moment. Stay with us. Our guests join us right now for final thoughts, but first, so what are you thinking? Our digital producer, Chloe Convoy, is tracking the comments. Chloe.
Alan, we had a total of 544 votes with 118 comments on our Facebook poll. The final poll shows that 59% of our Facebook viewers voted yes, that it was a mistake for Ron DeSantis to run the ad against the Mayor Gillum on the same day as Hurricane Michael. And 39% of our viewers said no, it was not a mistake. Thank you to everyone who took time to vote and comment on our Facebook poll. Be sure to visit our Facebook page every Friday to participate in the ABC 7 News at 7 poll, and I might read one of your comments on air. Alan, back to you.
Chloe, thank you very much. Not scientific, Congressman, but it does show something.
We need some change. We have two very different candidates. Andrew Gillum is the son of a school bus driver and a construction worker. He certainly knows what it means to struggle, not have health insurance, depend upon the quality of public schools. And we need a governor who's going to invest in our state and protect our wonderful natural resources, both our people, our beaches, our clean water. And I can think of no more compelling example than what's happened with the red tide in this area in the Everglades. There have been years of neglect by the legislature and Governor Scott. They've cut funding, they've cut regulation, and now as a result, they have spoiled our beaches and spoiled the clean water that we used to enjoy coming out of both the Caloosahatchee and the St. Lucie River. And the only way to change that is to change the leadership in Tallahassee. And I know Andrew Gillum will do that, and that's why I'm here supporting him.
Representative?
Listen, of course, we're going back to the people in the Panhandle. You know, we pray for them and hope that their recovery goes as quickly as possible. But when you're talking about the future of the state, the choices are very clear. The first thing we have to have is a governor that actually believes that we should continue the free enterprise model that has made Florida the envy of the other 49 states. That's Ron DeSantis. The second thing is we need a governor through his education plan that seeks to empower parents and empower families to find the educational options for their children as they see fit. That is Ron DeSantis. And the third is we need a governor who not only will fight hard to clean up our waterways, but also has a relationship with the executive in the White House to make sure that we get the funding we need to fix Florida's water. Right. And that's Ron DeSantis.
And we'll have to leave it there. Gentlemen, thank you. We want to thank our guest, State Representative Byron Donalds of Naples, representing the DeSantis campaign, and former Tampa Congressman Jim Davis, representing the Gillum campaign.